All right, so we're going to go over how to create a new document and some of the nuances of that. There's a few different ways that you can get to a new document. Obviously, what you're looking at right now, you would just create a new document. If you, for some reason, shut off that splash screen, you might not see that, and that's okay. You can go over and just hit go under the file menu and hit new or command N. A lot of these keyboard commands I'll be going over. I would suggest maybe making a note of them, writing them down. I'm also going to put some of the common ones in a sheet from Adobe on a resource page, so look for that. So I'm going to create new here, and it comes up. Now my new is going to look a little different because I work in Photoshop almost on a daily basis, whether I'm teaching it or not. And you can see that I have a lot of recent formats that I use. So you can use that. Now, all of these up top are ones that you potentially save. And you can see that I haven't saved any. And then ones that are specific to photo, that are in common photography formats, and even some templates that you might want to look at from Adobe. I am not sure because I'm on my personal account if you're going to see all of those, because those are things from the cloud that you won't necessarily have access to. And then they have different formats for print that are very common. And you can see that some of these, when I go into print, this has an RGB format. It's working in a specific color profile and the specific pixel aspect ratio. So just pay attention to those as I scroll through, because some of those are going to change depending on what you're working on. Film and video doesn't have a color management picked, and mobile doesn't have a color management picked because that has to do with your color profile for printing. So we're assuming for the art and illustration that the final format is going to be some kind of print mode. So we're going to go to back here, and we're just going to create a custom one, and we're going to give it a name. So if we were working on a particular project, I would have you name it project 1 _ your initials. But since this is a demo, I'm going to have a million of these today, demo _ and my initials. And I actually might, for mine, I'm going to put A because I've done this a couple times already. So this doesn't save it, it just is part of the preset with the document. So when you do save it, it's it's an added step. So I can change my width and height. You'll notice that you can work in pixels, inches, centimeters, millimeters, points, and picas. Points, picas are typically used for any kind of layout and graphic design. A lot of you all don't think in points and pixels, so I would suggest, or points and picas, I wouldn't suggest using that, but certainly if you're from a country where centimeters is kind of where you go, you know, how you think, and that's what you're used to using, you can certainly use that. I'm going to be working in inches, so I'm going to go ahead and put my inches in that I want. Sometimes I also work in pixels, so if I'm doing something for the web, or I'm doing something for film and video, I might be working in pixels and not inches. So, but since we're going to be assuming that this is going to be either a some kind of photo or paint project, I'm going to be working in inches. So I'm going to switch over to inches, and you can see that it will convert it. So if I wanted to work in inches, or wanted to work in pixels, but I didn't know what that the equivalent of that was, I could put in 10 inches, and then I could switch over to pixels, and it would switch that for me. So it will do the conversion for you if you're if you're unsure of the equivalent. So I'm going to go back to my inches, and I'm working on an 8 by 10. You can put whatever size you want in there, just a decent size, at least an 8 by 10 or bigger. You can change your orientation. So that would switch it to the width and the height for portrait versus landscape, where the width is the long edge. You can create multiple artboards in Photoshop. This is going to add some page weight, so we're not going to do that this time. And then our resolution. I'm going to do a whole other video just on what resolution means, what's the actual recipe, and what's so important. But it is important to note that the industry standard for printing, so if your final project is going to be printed, then it should be set at 300 pixels per inch at the size that you want to print it at. So because this is resolution dependent. So 8 by 10, if I wanted to print out an 8 by 10 as a final form, then I want to make sure that that is 300 pixels per inch. If I was going to do a 16 by 20, that was my final form. So you always want to think about what the final product is going to be and then work backwards. So I don't want a file quite that large this morning, so I'm going to set that to 8 by 10. Your color mode, you can set this to really the most common ones that you're going to be using. Even when I'm working in black and white image, I usually work in either RGB and CMYK because that's what it's going to print as. I only work in grayscale if I know that the printer that I'm going to is just black ink. Okay, so RGB or CMYK, there's also lab color, but these are the two most common, the RGB and CMYK. CMYK is typically used for any kind of print illustration that is going to a commercial printer. So when we get things ready to go for a book, we're going to make sure all of the images and the pages are set to CMYK. RGB is fine and is what should be used for film, video, web, mobile devices. And I use it a lot for photography, going to just large format inkjet printers. But best practice is actually to set it to CMYK even for that. So once I have all that done, our color profile, that's under the advanced options, so you might just see advanced options. There's different color profiles for different printers. sRGB is Adobe's, and that's fine, so you can just leave it at that. And then square pixels, there's different ones that work better for, you can see a lot of these have to do with the video formats, so maybe that square pixels aren't as effective for widescreen or an anamorphic lens. So we're going to go ahead and leave those as they are, so square pixels and then sRGB mode. And then once we are finished doing those, we just click create. And that is how you create a new document in Photoshop.